Are you trying to establish your brand as a thought leader? Start a podcast, invite industry experts to be guests on your show, and watch your brand become the prime resource for decision makers in your industry. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I am your host for today's episode, Nikki Ivy with Sweetfish Media. Guys, I've got with me today James Mackey, who is CEO of SecureVision. I got James, and he's got opinions and thoughts and takes for y'all. But we're going to be talking about, this question of when is it okay to actually sell? So much work is done by thought leaders and contributors alike to talk salespeople out of selling most of the time because it's offensive. Is this sort of the idea that's out there? I won't put words into James's mouth, but this is, if you've encountered this idea, you know what I'm talking about. We're going to dig into it and figure out when is it okay to be a salesperson. Before we dig into that, though, James, I'd love it if you would just give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you and the folks at SecureVision are up to these days.
Yeah, sure thing, Nikki. Thank you for having me today. I'm really looking forward to this. So SecureVision, we're a boutique agency, and we combine traditional headhunting with modern recruitment consulting. Basically, what we do is we help high-growth tech companies hire revenue-generating talent. We also advise them on best practices and how to implement process, their technology stack, and build out their internal team so they can have an internal recruitment strategy that works at scale. So we work with companies just to help them hire. We help other companies actually build out a program at scale. So it just depends. But that's basically what we do. And we work with around 110 companies in the hyper-growth, VC-backed SaaS space typically. Yeah.
Oh, so all my friends in the hyper-growth VC-backed. I spent a little time in the Austin startup streets. I like to talk about it. It was a fun time. Learned some stuff. Failed some stuff.
Right. Yep.
And won some stuff. So, I think I got pretty much everything one can get out of that environment. But what I didn't get was definitive, conclusive advice on when it is okay to sell, particularly when it comes to a social selling strategy. I talk to marketers every day on this podcast, as you know, and the consensus is generally when it comes to a social content strategy that we're not selling, that we're building awareness or building brand or sort of doing this, make them come to you type of strategy, but to directly pitch, directly ask for the business is a no-no. But James says there are nuances and that we would do well to explore those. So give us a quick overview of first what your successful social selling strategy has been and has had to be and how you built your business on it. And then your philosophy on why you think maybe we need to rethink these ideas.
Well, I think it's first off, it's a little bit funny because I think it's just commonly accepted now, and the vast majority of thought leaders that I'm seeing, particularly on LinkedIn, are saying, hey, your whole content strategy, just give, never talk about what you do. You should just focus on adding value. And I always thought that just sounded a little weird to me because I was thinking to myself, like, well, if you're not in a business that adds value, then why are you doing it? Like, obviously your product or service adds value to a specific market, and that's why there's a company people pay you to provide that product or service. It just didn't really make sense to me. But more so, it's I'm just looking at facts. And when I started my company, I didn't have any money saved up, and I actually didn't have any leads. I didn't go into SecureVision having a client base. And I also, at the time, was living in Europe. So I didn't have the ability to go to conferences and go to Silicon Valley and meet with people in person. So I had to define a strategy online to acquire customers. So basically what I did is I just started marketing out candidates that I was working with and basically asking for business on LinkedIn indirectly, but posting content talking about, hey, I'm partnered with this really great candidate who's exceeding quota in a highly relevant SaaS environment, is currently looking for their next role in October. And this sounds like somebody that you'd be interested in speaking with. Hit me up. Let me know. And just dropping that type of content. And the response was just amazing. I mean, in my first month of business, I signed up a $2 billion publicly traded company. And within the first 3 months, we had signed an exclusive contract with them to do all their B2B SaaS sales. It was 3 months. I was halfway across the world, right? But I just had the right social strategy. And from there, it just snowballed. I signed up WeWork and SimilarWeb and all sorts of really great hyper-growth late-stage SaaS companies. So I've done it. And so I have now a client book of 110 great customers. And we've closed millions in terms of revenue throughout the years. And it's funny, I'll comment on the different thought leaders out there and I'll just say like, hey, look, like, so I understand that maybe there's some different philosophies, but that said, what about these 110 clients and all this revenue and all this success over here? How is this fit into that? Right. And there just doesn't really seem to be a desire to want to acknowledge that there's a place for it. And I think that one of the things that I've been talking with my network about is just that it all depends on your objectives.
Sure.
Like you got to, what is your objective on social? What do you want to do? And I would agree that if you're a CEO that's focused on building out your personal brand and you really just want to focus on being a thought leader and being known as an influencer and you want to get more speaking engagements, then yes, you should focus on content that isn't directed at selling directly or indirectly what you do, just adding value and being seen as that expert. But if you're an SDR or an account executive, I think it's completely reasonable to talk about what you do. You just have to do it the right way. You can't, if you're just saying like, hey, we're an analytics platform and we do this and that, and if you're interested in a demo, hit us up. Like nobody's going to engage with that. But if you, on the other hand, say something to the effect of like, wow, I was just in New York City today. I visited one of my biggest clients and I was walking them through one of the features that we just released. And it was so cool to see the look on their face when they experienced the success and they were able to get XYZ done in a shorter amount of time. And this is what I play for. This is what I love. And if you're struggling with this, I'd love to help you out too. Feel free to DM me. If you posted like that, like 1 to 3 times a week, just a story like that, people would be much more likely to engage and you would start to get inbound leads. So I think that's it. Like people just aren't creative. They're like, oh, I can't sell on social. It's like, no, you're just doing it wrong. And it's like, the same people who are saying you can't sell on social, they advocate for cold calling. And that's like saying cold calling doesn't work because only a small percentage engage. Well, cold calling does work. Well, yeah, a lot of people don't want to hear it. But when you do engage with the right person, it's successful. And that's why people advocate for that. It's the same thing with selling on social. Yeah, you're not going to get 500 likes on that post unless you tell a really good story, and you probably could. But you might get a lot less likes. But like I've had plenty of posts that have like 10 likes, maybe 1 comment, where I sign up a great client. Right. And then I had, a few weeks ago, I had this post about how to answer if somebody asks you how to sell a pin on an interview. And it went viral and, got 500,000 views and thousands of comments and these types of things. No business has landed from that. Now, my strategy is changing though, right? Now we have all these clients. Now I want to do the thought leadership and I want to do the speaking engagement. So my strategy has changed, but there's absolutely no reason for somebody in the selling position shouldn't be selling what they do on social, and it should be valuable to their network. And if it's not, they should go sell something they believe in that does add value.
I think you hit on so many key things. The first one though is this idea of, and we talked a little bit about it offline as well, is that it depends on what your role is or your seniority in your organization or in your career so far. So what we have a lot of the time is CEOs telling SDRs to basically mirror a CEO social strategy.
Yes, exactly.
At the same time, as an SDR, you're at a disadvantage because you likely don't have the experience or the perceived expertise to speak from the same place of credibility as the CEO. So you're competing with them for the same social space to cut through the same social noise. I've seen it done, but to what end, right?
Yeah, and I think for the SDRs, like they can certainly gain a following if they speak to what they know. And if they're speaking to other SDRs, they can still be effective as a quote unquote thought leader, whatever that really means. But if they can gain a following and do that, but it just depends on what their objective is. If they're looking to use social as a means to connect with more buyers, and if you're like most SDRs, you have a monthly quota.
Yeah, and your prospects don't want to hear you talk about how you became such a good salesperson, unless they're other salespeople. And most of us don't sell to other salespeople. So I think that's the disconnect. And I'm really glad you illuminated this for me, because it's something that I had been struggling with, that maybe I didn't understand why I was struggling with it. But I was like, look, the fact is, I guess I hadn't drawn this line in the sand of what exactly do I want from my social strategy. Do I want to be necessarily a thought leader, or do I want this to be a channel to get more prospects and to get more business? And I had not decided that until today, James, until I had you sit in front of me. I'll tell you, I have been leaning very much toward the thought leadership piece, because for whatever reason, for me, that's been easier. We talked about offline how, like, depending on the things the content that I put out, there's a discernible difference between the response I get on a thought leadership piece and the response I get when I'm talking about what I actually do, and who I actually want to work with. But I hate to call it a formula, but the sort of framework that you use in the way that you ask for the business, I think is something that folks that no matter what industry you're selling into can use. So one more time, talk us through what that looks like, what that sounds like when you're pitching, but indirectly, how to do it right.
It's a very thought through strategy, and the way I'll just give you the real life, opposed to just giving like a marching like step by step. I'm just going to tell exactly how we did it. So probably in fall 2016, I sat down with my team, and we had done what we call candidate marketing out people that we had spoken with through email. And we're like, okay, we're going to take that approach and we're going to apply it to LinkedIn. And this was before everyone was like, LinkedIn, like let's all post every day. So we were doing this, like we were one of the first, and we were doing this better than I think pretty much most services companies. I didn't see any other recruiters do it or anything else. And we just started doing that. And I just set a goal with the team. Like, all right, guys, I want everyone to market out 3 candidates a week. And it got to the point, the most success we ever had was in winter 2017, early 2018. We had a 3-month period where we signed up over 30 clients due to this strategy.
Wow.
So just to give you a sense, but the way we did it was we basically it was like going fishing. We put out the bait. This is like, hey, this is the value that we can offer. We tied it into a story about one of the things we love most is when we see somebody who's super passionate and hardworking, and reminds me of this, the candidate that I just spoke with today. And she was telling me about her story and how she was able to persevere through X, Y, and Z. And she went to this company, did very well. And then at her next company, they went through 3 layoffs, and she made it through that. She made the cuts and this, that, and the other. And you humanize it, you make it real. And you say like they're at, and we've refined it and we continuously change it up. And that's just for us. But for different industries, it's just like, if you're not a recruiter, of course you can still do this. You just have to know how to apply it. And SaaS, it's very easy to do this in pretty much any industry, that if your buyers are on LinkedIn, obviously. Right. But you just have to think about like, how can I show my expertise in an indirect way that's just hyper focused on what the buyer cares about. And that's also, that doesn't come across as a hard sell. I tried the hard sell too. I've done the posts for, back in the day, a few years ago, where I was just like, SecureVision, is a recruitment resource for this, and that, and starts talking about like what we do. And that really didn't get us anywhere. But I tell you, pretty much every time I speak with a prospect, they're like, oh yeah, I've seen your post for the last few years. That's why we decided to reach out.
Yeah.
It definitely works.
Yeah. So I get it now. And what's crazy is that what you're describing is just like being a good salesperson, period. Like any salesperson who is winning or who's got it right is telling a good story. They've figured that part out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they have figured out how to do that without, boiling down what they do to the nuts and bolts, or boiling down what they do to the features and benefits. And it's very similar. It reminded me of when you were just saying it. It sounds a lot like a stump speech, right? So I'm a politician, and I say it's like a young mother that I met in California who was working 3 jobs. And you know what? Like you laugh, but that
Right.
resonates.
Right.
That resonates. Now, like you said, it humanizes, and you give me so many ideas. I cannot wait to steal all of it.
Yeah, please do. It really, it works. And it's funny. It's like I've suggested this to people that I really respect that are very prominent on LinkedIn. And
I know who you're
like,
talking
in
about.
one ear. No, it's a lot. It's pretty, there's so many, like anyone who sells to, like anyone who's an influencer and their buyer is in marketing or sales is kind of perpetuating it. And so to me, it's like, yeah, there's certainly a place for that, but it's like saying that like cold calling doesn't work because of the tactics on the call. Like, well, why don't we just get creative and keep switching something up and make it fun? Right.
Yeah.
And like, there's other ways. Like if you look at, there's all sorts of TV shows about small businesses and they'll take you behind the scenes of like a brewery or like an artist, or, they talk about the process and how they do things and like kind of this behind the scenes thing. That's another great way to do it. Talk about like behind the scenes, like, what you guys are doing and how you make decisions and how you evaluate certain things and how you test certain things. Like those are all opportunities to engage with the buyer in a way where you're not just like saying like, hey, like this is our service, but you're actually providing some kind of unique value and making it a little bit more interesting to digest for the right person. And yeah, so what? It gets less engagement. Like that's the other thing. Everyone's so obsessed with likes and comments. Like I would rather get a post with 10 likes, or I used to at least, right? When my strategy was client acquisition solely on LinkedIn, it was like, I would rather get a post with 10 likes and a comment where that engagement is going to turn into business than have a post with 100 likes and 100 comments. And the counter argument to that is like, well, yeah, but you spread the word, you get in front of more people and then they find out about you. And like, okay, like, sure. I understand that. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I can just speak from my own experience. And it's worked quite well. So I just think that it's like, it's something where we have to, whenever something gets to the point where it's like created, like it's considered like sacred within the realm of like sales or marketing, that's exactly when you have to start questioning it and figure out like, how can I get ahead? Because everybody is doing this shit, right? Everybody wants to be a thought leader now. Everybody's publishing content, right? Well, not everyone, but like a much bigger percentage of people are.
Sure.
Right. So it's like, honestly, there's never been a better time than to sell your services on LinkedIn content than right now, because nobody is doing it.
Yeah.
Nobody's just coming out there just saying like, hey, like I just had this great success story, essentially a little bit of a case study, put it in there. If you're dealing with this, I'd love to chat with you. Feel free to hit me up.
Yeah. I can think of a couple of organizations that come to mind that I've seen doing it. And I was like shocked and disappointed at how little engagement that they got, because the way that these folks did it was brilliant. And that the only sin they committed was at the end of telling this story, there was a call to action. And
it's okay though.
Which must have turned people off. But it's like, I stand what they did. I'm a fan of it. I believe in it. And like I said, hey, y'all look out. It's coming. It's about to get pitched, fam.
See, that's it's okay though, right? Like let's say that only like a few people engage with it, but it gets in front of a buyer at the right time, they're gonna follow up on that. And that's the thing. It's like when I was cold calling, like back in the day when I was an SDR, I was doing like 100 cold calls a day, and a successful day was having 3 meetings set.
Yep.
So a successful day was a 3% success ratio, right? And you just have to train your mind to work in that way when you're in sales. And to me, when I would get low engagement, like I didn't really care, because most people didn't seem to want to engage with it, but the few that did become paying customers. And that was a whole other thing. It's like it be considered short-sighted. Well, no, it's not. These are real relationships that are with me. Like I have really amazing relationships with all these companies, and that's going to be with me for the rest of my career and the rest of my life. Like that's incredibly valuable. Like I have infinite amount of options because of this strategy, So I don't know. It's just a give or take, right? I think it always comes down to what objective do you have, and just constantly testing things to try to figure out like what's the most effective strategy to get there.
So that's it, guys. If you're taking notes, know why you're there, tell a story, and lean in to what you want to get out of the relationship. Know that it's contextual. There's a right and a wrong way. We just talked a lot about the right way. So reconcile with yourself and your soul that you are in fact a salesperson, and that salespeople sell. and that if done right, it really isn't something that you should ever have to regret or downplay or look or have looked down on. So thank you for laying this out for us. Like I said, this was highly anticipated James Mackey on my show today. And now that I've had a chance to successfully pick your brain, it's time for you to tell us about what you are putting in it. So James, talk about a learning resource that you have engaged with here recently that is informing your approach or that has just got you excited these days.
I could just give a book recommendation, but I'm going to try to go and give something a little bit deeper than that. I think that honestly, my strategy, my whole career, really for the last 10 years has been to constantly put myself in situations where I feel stretched, that I'm doing things beyond what I know how to do, and just really just get myself uncomfortable. And I kind of made a commitment to myself for the next 10, 15 years to always be in an uncomfortable place in my career, always biting off just a little bit more than I could chew. So I think in terms of like what kind of information propels me forward or what I use as a resource is just experiences in general, traveling. I've lived in a lot of different countries. When I started SecureVision, I also moved to Europe with my girlfriend, and we were traveling around to different countries as I started the company. And that taught me just so much about life and gave me so much perspective. And whenever there's been a big decision in my life and I wasn't sure if I should go for it, I've always just gone for it and chosen the uncomfortable path that just forces me to grow. And I think that's, there's a time to listen to other people and to pick up a book and to read, but there's another time where just make a strong decision that's going to force you to grow and experience it in real life. You got to put down the phone and just get out there and travel and meet new people and just make big decisions that you don't know how you're going to like figure it out and just go for it. And when your back is up against the wall, you find a way, and that's where the real growth occurs. So to me, that's kind of been my strategy for growth, and what I consume is just, I try to consume as much of life as I can and just try to learn as much as I can.
I love it. Get out there and do and live and be, people. So I know, James, that just like me, folks listening have become fast fans of yours, or they're going to want to send you all kinds of messages about how vehemently they disagree with you. Whatever the case, let us know how folks can connect with you.
So you can hit me up on LinkedIn. So my name is James Mackey, but the handle is Jimmy Mackey. If you want to search for me, if you can't find me. And then on Instagram, it's James J. Mackey. And I believe it's the same on Twitter. So.
Should I have been calling you Jimmy this whole time?
No, it's just, I either one is fine.
Okay.
James,
all right.
Jim,
well,
whatever.
Nikki is short for Shaniqua, so now we're officially
cool.
acquainted.
All right.
You'll have to be on this show another time because I love a controversial queen, and I love. Just kidding. I was speaking drag just now, just for all of y'all out there who are wondering. But no, I love the absence of an echo chamber. I love an opposing viewpoint, and most of all, I love what works. And that's what you talked about today, for real. It wasn't just, being contrarian for the sake of, it was, hey, here's what's worked for me, and then concrete examples of how and why it's worked for you. So thank you so much for that. Like I said, I'm going to be watching your content, and we're just going to have you on another time to talk about some more things that other folks aren't necessarily talking about. But for now, we'll close it out. Thank you so much, James, for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
If you're a regular listener of B2B Growth, odds are you might enjoy sales success stories with Scott Ingram as well. Well, this year, thanks to a partnership with Outreach and Sales Hacker, our friend Scott Ingram is making the live stream of his Sales Success Summit available for free. The event is on October 14th and 15th, featuring 13 presentations and 5 panels, all presented by top-performing B2B sales professionals. You can check it out and register at top1.fm/live. That's top1.fm/live.